Morning, it's Thursday, April 18th, Parshas Achramos Kedoshim.
22nd. No.
Yesterday was the 20. Today is the 23rd day of the Omer.
Okay. Somebody didn't say.
Now, 23rd is Gematria Chaya.
Chet Yud He.
Life. This week's Parsha is Achramos. I wasn't going to talk about this, but since you said 23rd, this week's Parsha is Achramos, after you die. But Chaya is life. So we'll talk. I'll get to that in a second. First, I want to ask you a question. A boy is 12 years old, and he does a mitzvah. Does he get a reward for that? For that mitzvah?
13 is a...
13, you have to do the mitzvahs once you're 13. But he's 12, and he does a mitzvah. Does he get a reward for it?
Most probably something, I don't know.
Of course. Do a mitzvah, you get a reward. If he does an Aveira,
it's written for his father.
His parents get the punishment. But if you do a mitzvah, you get the reward. Now, who gets a bigger reward? The 12-year-old who does a mitzvah or the 13-year-old does the exact same mitzvah? Who gets a bigger reward? The one that didn't have to do it but does it anyway, or the one that has to do it?
My daughter. Hello?
Okay. Put it on pause for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so I was asking a question. So who has a bigger mitzvah? The 12-year-old who didn't have to do it, but he does it anyway, or the 13-year-old who had to do it? In general, if there are two people and somebody has to do a mitzvah and somebody doesn't have to do it, who gets a bigger mitzvah? The one that had to do it, or the one that didn't have to do it?
I have some opinion about it.
Let me have your opinion.
My opinion is better to do something with ahava or with the ira.
Right.
If you do with ahava, it's much better than ira.
Right. So you're saying, according to what you're saying, is that if you have to do it, you have yira, you get a reward, but not as much as the person who didn't have to do it and only did it because of ahava, and that's why he gets a bigger mitzvah.
Based on what I'm saying, I would say 12 years.
12 years. So as usual, Benny is exactly wrong, and we have a klal. I love you and your phone. I love you and your phone.
I knew you were going to say that, but
yeah. So that we can have a discussion, you gave me what you know is the wrong answer,
yes,
but you gave it to me anyway because what you're saying makes absolutely 100% sense. If somebody goes overboard and does something even that he didn't have to do, it's much better than if somebody has to do it. You know, like if you're working at a job and your job is to do one thing. And you're not only doing your job, you're doing your friend's job that
he's not obligated.
He's not obligated. Okay.
And he does it.
So in the mitzvahs, we don't use this logic, and it's the opposite. Okay. And Godol mitzvah ma'osa mishe'ena mitzvah v'osa. It's bigger, the person who is, it's a bigger mitzvah, bigger schar, the person who had to do it, than the one who doesn't have to do it. And the number one reason, the obvious reason, the one that's really
B'nai Aharon.
No, the reason is that when you don't have to do something, you don't have a Yetzer Hara. When you have to do a mitzvah, the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to do the mitzvah. So you're fighting the Yetzer Hara, you're killing yourself to do this mitzvah because the Yetzer Hara is working against you, so you get a good reward. The one that doesn't have to do the mitzvah, the 12-year-old doesn't have a Yetzer Hara because he's not required to do the mitzvah.
So he doesn't have the Yetzer Hara.
So he doesn't have the Yetzer Hara. So therefore, a person who has a Yetzer Hara and still does the mitzvah gets a bigger mitzvah. So now it makes sense. Now,
can you compare, relate this thing you're saying to B'nai, the two children of Aharon, that they weren't Mesuvah, they weren't commanded to bring the Korban,
right? And
they did bring, and they got killed or
burned. They got burned because they brought fire.
A strange fire.
Strange fire. I mean, it's a very difficult thing.
Okay.
It's a very, very difficult thing. Now, we say. So the reason I started this is nothing to do with the shiur that I'm going to give today, which is mostly on codes in the Torah, but I once said a very interesting shot. You know, we have Parshas Bereshis. The first Parsha in the Torah is Bereshis, right? It's the first word in the Torah, right? The first word, Bereshis. The name of the Parsha is the first word in the Torah, right? What's the next Parsha in the Torah? Noach. Which word is that in the Parsha? No, third word. Eila told us Noach. Yeah. Okay. Next one is Lech Lecha. Which word is that? The Parsha. V'daber Hashem El Avraham maybe.
No, Lech Lecha ma'artzecha.
Yeah, but which word is it? How many words do you have to go in the beginning of the Parsha till you get to Lech Lecha? Didn't you understand what I'm asking?
I understand. The first one.
No, the first word is not Lech Lecha. It doesn't start. The Torah doesn't. The Parsha doesn't start. I'm going to look at it in a second because they keep changing it every year. Vayomer Hashem El Avram Lech Lecha. So it's the fifth word.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Bereshis is the first word. Lech Lecha is the third word. I mean Noach. Lech Lecha is the fifth. Chayesora. It's the second. Vahi Chayesora. It's already the second.
So let's write it down.
No, you don't have to write this down.
1, 3, 5.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that the parsha of the Torah is always in the beginning and usually in the first pasuk. And sometimes it's the first word, sometimes it's the second, sometimes the third, sometimes it's the seventh. Which parsha is it the longest? You have to go the most words till you get to the name of the parsha.
That's why we want to say this week's parsha.
This week's parsha. And I explained the reason why. It says in by Yaakov.
It's Acharei Mot.
Kedoshim. This week goes two parshas, Acharei Mot, Kedoshim. So I'm going to explain what that all means. Again, this is my own pshat. You don't have to accept it. It talks about Yaakov and Esav. It says, Vahi Esav ish Yodei Tzayid. He was a person who went out in the field to
He was a hunter.
V'Yankov ish Tam. Yankov was a complete person. Yoshev Ahalim. What does that mean, Yoshev Ahalim?
He was a learning person.
He was sitting in the tent. Which tent? Rashi says over there. Which tent? We're talking about the tent. Oh, good morning. We're talking about the tent of Shem ve'Ever. He was sitting in the tent. We come into shul in the morning. What do we say? Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkanesecha Yisrael. So when you see the word ohel, it means the tent. So it usually means yeshiva where you're learning. Good morning. So in fact, it says by the parshas. Good morning. In the parshas of Pora Aduma, it says it's a very famous Gemara or Medrash. It says Zos talks about a person who is contaminated because he was around a dead person. So that's we have different levels of tumah. The highest level of tumah there is a tumah mez. That's avi avos tumah. That's the grandfather of tumahs. And if you touch a dead person, you become an avatumah, and that person touches somebody, you're rishon and sheni, and it makes a difference whether which level you are, because depending on what level you are, you can contaminate other things, and it doesn't apply that much in these days. But in the time when there were kahanim that were eating truma, in Yad Shem Beni, you'll have to know this. When Mashiach comes, like which truma you're allowed to eat. Actually, there won't be any dead people then. But anyway, so it says in the Torah, Zos HaTorah. This is the learning, the Torah. Odem kiyom is be'oel, a person who dies in the tent, and it goes on. It's to say what happens to everything that's in the tent and up. So we learn from this, Zos HaTorah. This is what's the real Torah. Odem kiyomus be'oel, a person who dies in the tent. In other words, he's killing himself in the tent. Oel, as I said, a person who's killing himself to learn. That's the real Torah. That means a person who is not required to learn, he doesn't have to kill himself to learn. It's much easier, as I said before, when you don't have a Yetzer Hara. But when you have to learn, then it's difficult. So this is This is the pshat that I gave on Achrei Mos Kedoshim. Kedoshim is the 14th word. The 14th word, the longest of any parsha till you get to the name of the parsha. First comes Achrei Mos. First you have to kill yourself. You have to become bar mitzvah, 13. Then you really have to kill yourself to learn. And then Kedoshim. Then comes Kedoshim, the 14th.
Beautiful. You have to write it down.
Okay.
It's recorded, yeah?
Yeah, it's recorded. Okay.
Beautiful.
All right. So now I wanted to just read from you.
You know, you heard that, I'm sure you heard it. Acharei Mor Kedoshim.
Yes. After somebody dies, then they tell him that he's holy. It's always after, but it's the truth of the matter is that's the sad fact of life, that you don't know what you're missing until you're missing. You don't know what you have until you're missing it.
And another thing, you cannot judge people like just having, being with them or something. You don't know what's in their heart.
Right. So, we see that, when sometimes a person dies, you go, God forbid, to a funeral, and you hear somebody, a rabbi getting up, and somebody who you thought you knew, and then you hear such amazing, wonderful things about him, and you didn't realize what a great guy he was. Of course, there's the other side of that where somebody says, "Who's he talking about?"
Right.
I
just want to. I'm sorry to want to talk about my father. I thought my father wasn't so religious, wasn't this.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting older, and I'm thinking about what he used to do, how much chesed he used to do, how much the different things in his life that he didn't even brag about it, but we found out about it. And which day he died. Thursday night, and Friday morning we made all arrangements to bury him in Staten Island. Everything was ready to go Friday.
I know.
Rush. And something came up. The rabbi said, "What? You have to go to Yerushalayim."
Right.
And I think it needed kedusha, somebody just to be ready to go to Staten Island, and everything will change in 10 seconds. I know. And we have to take him to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim.
So that was unbelievable, and the way you got it done, it was, I remember you flew and you came right back.
I think that he had he cannot just be big in Yerushalayim, big Hebron in Yerushalayim, if you don't have the zachut.
Right. So, okay, he should be a good representative up there for you, for your family.
Especially that you should, because recording it, that you should know you did a lot that night.
Well,
again.
You're welcome. Okay, so we have I have this sefer here. It's called Torah's Chemed. This was written by the students and the son-in-law of a very famous rabbi. He lived here in America, but it came from Europe. His name was or is, I'm never sure, when you talk about somebody who's not here anymore, do you say, for example, my father's name was, or my father's name is?
Is. That is passed away.
Yeah, I never know how the correct way to say that about somebody who's gone. You have an opinion, Mr. Gordon?
Lubavitch talk about the Rebbe like he's...
Yeah, by the Rebbe, but I'm saying, like, when I tell somebody asks me, what's your father's name? Do I say my father's name was or is?
No, you say my father, Allah HaShalom.
Anyway, so his name, I got off a little bit over here, his name is, or was, Reb Chaim Michal Dov Weissmendel. You ever hear of him? Mitch, you heard of him?
He's done.
Anyway, he was Rosh Yeshiva in the Nitri Yeshiva here in Mount Kisco, New York. But he came from Europe, and he was an unbelievable tzaddik. And he warned people still in Europe that Hitler's coming, and
he ran away before the Hitler.
And he told people to run away and everything. And he wrote many sforim, and here is one sefer that they put together in 4 parts of the things that he did on various subjects. One of the subjects that he writes about, and he was maybe the very first one who wrote about the codes that's written in the Torah. For those that don't know what I mean by the codes.
Gematria.
Not gematria. Nothing to do with gematria. Codes meaning that if you take let's say, here's the most famous code that everybody talks about. Everything, and he brings down everything. The Gemara says in Masechtas Tainus, Omer Chazal, the rabbi said, Mi ikim midid eksiva v'lo remiza baraisa. Is there anything that was written ever, anything that ever happened or will happen, that's not already in the Torah? And of course they say no. Everything that was, is, and will be is already written in the Torah. And one of the famous ones, like the Vilna Gaon says, every mitzvah is in the Torah. And in fact, he said, not only is every mitzvah in the Torah, every mitzvah is in the first word of the Torah, in Bereshis. So somebody went over to him and teased him, and he said, Pidyon Aben. So Rabbi Schnitzler, of course, knows about this, and he says, yeah, what about Pidyon Aben, the redeeming of the firstborn after 30 days? So the Vilna Gaon says, that one is an easy one. You gave me an easy one. Bereshis, Ben Rishon, Acher Shloshim Yom Tivda. The first son, after 30 days, you have to redeem. There is a sefer called Igra de Kala that lists over there 100 different things that are in the first word. The old Munkacher Rebbe also has it in the beginning of his sefer. It also has many, many things. And I myself came up with about 25 different things that are in the first word. And I remember saying this a few years ago to somebody, and somebody says, yeah, where's 9/11? Where's 9/11 in the first word in the Torah? And I told him that one is the easiest of all. Bereshis. 2 towers, Beis, Rashis. Rashis Gematria 9/11. And in fact, if you turn around the word Rashis, it's towers, Beis towers. Even that word is in. Or Trei Ba'esh. Take the word Bereshis, Trei, 2, Ba'esh, and fire. It came down in fire. So 9/11 is in there many times. But everything is in the Torah. Good morning, Rabbi. So, but that's not necessarily the codes. The codes that we're talking about is where you take, where you find something in the Torah which is equal distance in spacing from each other, and I'll show you exactly what I mean.
Did you take a spy classes, Mendy?
No. I hope I can find this quickly. Not waste too much time with this.
To read the codes.
This is very fascinating. There are books, English books on this also, which talks about the code. In fact, the Christians also have found all kinds of things, codes in the Torah. Gosh. Anyway, I'm not going to find it.
Anyway, find it.
I should find it. It's in Parshas Bo, I believe. Where somebody says. Let me put this on pause for. Okay, so as I said, the codes in the Torah, if you look at Parshas Bo, chapter 11, verse 9, Perik Yedalev, there's 9/11, you see? If you take a look at 9/11 in Parshas Bo, even mundane things, like there's so many things that happen in the world that, of course, there's no such thing as coincidence. What I always like to repeat that I heard from a friend of mine is there's no such thing as coincidence. Coincidence is ka-incidence. Ka is Hashem. Everything is from Hashem.
Even English word.
Even the Hebrew word of coincidence is mikra. Mikra, if you turn around the letters, is rak me Hashem. Everything comes from Hashem. So 2 days ago, mikra is mem kuf reish hey. So it's rak, only me Hashem, from Hashem. So
that's nice.
So 2 days ago, the world celebrated the first black player ever to play baseball, Jackie Robinson. So they retired his number. You follow baseball? So retired his number 42. So on April 15th, if you watch the Yankee game, Everybody wore number 42, L'Zeicher Nishmas, this Gewaltige Godel Hadar, Jackie Robinson. But it was, even though it's mundane, has nothing to do with it, but still, look at it, it was number 42. This Yankees won, the score was 4-2. Okay? The pitcher who won the game, the saver, is the only person left wearing that number because nobody wears that number anymore because it's too holy. So only Mariano Rivera wore number 42. So he was pitching that game. And the one who won the game, hit a home run, his number was reversed, 24, but also the 4-2. So everything, somehow or another. Now, somebody's going to say, that's not, you can't, somebody's going to say, that's nothing. You can never say it's nothing. If it happened in this world, it's because Hashem wanted it to happen. So maybe we don't have the ability to figure out what exactly that means, but we know one thing. It wasn't a coincidence. Okay.
So Michael Jordan's number is 24.
23.
23?
23, yeah. Which is today's sphere is 23. Okay. So you see, you had to come today to say that, so I should be... Okay. Anyway, in Parshas Bo, it says somebody once asked, where do we find any gadol that ever lived, any tzaddik who ever lived is in the Torah, whether it happened at the time the Torah was given, or 100, or 1,000, or 2,000 years later, it's all in the Torah. And I'll talk about Hanukkah, where you find Matisyahu in the Torah in a minute. But this is the famous one that somebody says, where do you find the Rambam in the Torah? And there are so many places. If you take a look at the all right, you know what? I'll give once a class about the Rambam and all the works that he did and all this forum that he wrote. He wrote Yad Chazakah, which is 14, and he goes on Mishnah Torah. He talks about the mitzvahs. Everything is in the Torah, unbelievably. But here's just one that I'm going to tell you. Is Vayomer Hashem Moshe Lishma Laman Revos Mofsai Be'eretz Mitzrayim. And he says, I'm going to do something to add wonders in Eretz Mitzrayim. So right away, we know the Rambam lived in Eretz Mitzrayim. But look at the word Laman Rabos Mofsai Be'eretz Mitzrayim. The first letters are Reish, Mem, Beis, Mem. So you take every fourth. So not only does it start with every word, but every fourth letter is his name. Reish, Mem, Beis, Mem. So this is called codes. There's somewhere in the Torah you're going to find Binyamin ben Yaakov. You may have to start with a Beis in Parshas Vayigash and count 2,741 letters, and then you'll come to a Nun, and then you'll count the exact same numbers, and you'll go equal distance, the same number of letters, and you'll spell out your name, Binyamin ben Yaakov. And by the way, there are programs today.
Find for yourself?
Yes, you can. There's programs in that you can take a word. What?
I was going to say there's an app for that.
There's an app for that. You can put in a program. So this now today it's easy. First of all, everything's computerized. We have programs, and it takes a split second to find these things. But in 1930 or 40, whenever there was no computers, there weren't even calculators, and he found unbelievable codes in the Torah, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm going to give you a few.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. We know we have a saying in the Zohar. It says, Yisroel ve'eraisa kutsha barichu chadu. The Torah, the Jews, and Hashem is one. So here's what he comes up with. He says that in the Gemara in Tainus, where it says that everything that's in the Torah, it says everything is in the Torah and everything is sealed in the Torah in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. So he explains what this means. So if you take the word, so we have Yisrael, we have Araisa, the Torah, and Hashem. Kutchabrichu, he says, is one. So he wants to show you how in the beginning of the Torah, and in the middle of the Torah, and in the end of the Torah, this is true. Unbelievable. going to be a little bit difficult to follow without pen and paper, but just listen to it, and maybe you can watch it afterwards on YouTube and figure it out. If you take from, we know Hashem's name is 26.
Yes.
So write down 26, Benny.
26.
Hashem, Yud K, Vav K is 26.
Yes, I know.
Yisrael is 541.
541.
So together, it's 567.
567, that's correct.
Okay, now keep in mind that this rabbi did this without a calculator and without a computer. Okay?
Yeah.
Now he says he wants to show you that from the beginning of the Torah, there is a code. He goes, take from Bereshis Bor Lakim Es Hashemayim Ve'es Haaretz. Okay?
Yeah.
Now the S is from Aleph to Tov, right? The whole Torah is Aleph to Tov. So he says, take that Tov from S and count 567 letters. From that, you're going to come from that Tov, you're going to come to a Vav. And then from that Vav, count 567 letters, and you're going to come to a Resh. And if you count 567 letters from that, you come to a Hey, which is Torah. You got it, Benny?
Vav Resh.
Tov, from the first Tov, from the S. Bereshis Bor Lakim Es Hashemayim Ve'es Haaretz.
Tov start from
Tov.
the Tov.
Start from the Tov and count 567 letters. You're going to come to Torah. Now, how he was able to figure this out, or even to think about it, I have no idea.
And he
Now,
sat down and he counted it every...
okay, now, maybe you want to go home and count it. I'm going to do it because I don't trust them. Okay, so here you have the word Torah. Now, this is in the beginning of the Torah. Now, he goes, let's take the middle of the Torah. Where's the middle of the Torah? It's exactly 2 weeks ago in the Parsha, it says there's a big Vav in the Torah, the Gochom, and that's exactly the middle of the Torah. So he says, if you take the word Torah is gematria 611.
Torah, yeah.
Okay, and Yisrael is gematria 541. If you take Torah and Yisrael together, you have 1152.
That's correct.
Okay, now he tells you to go from the middle of the Torah, from that Vav, and count 1152 letters, you come to a Hey. Count 1152 letters, you come to a Resh. I'm sorry.
Vav.
Where's it?
He.
Count from that Vav, you start with the Vav, count 1152
So we have
letters,
we have already
Vav. Count 1152 letters, you come to a Hey.
Yeah.
Count 1152 letters, you come to a Yud.
Yud.
And count 1152 letters, you come to another Hey, which is Yud K Vav K. So here we see again that, okay, and now he goes to the end of the Torah.
No, you had Vav.
You have Yud K Vav K.
The first letter was Vav.
Vav Hey Yud Hey, which is the letters Yud K Vav K. Okay, and now at the end of the Torah,
that doesn't have a okay.
Okay, now you come to the end of the Torah, and you take the word Torah, which is 611, and you add to it Hashem, which is 26, and the total is 637.
Yes.
And you count from the end of the Torah. He wants to, before I did the beginning, the middle, now the end of the Torah. What's the last letter? A Lamed. Lainei Kol Yisrael. You take that Lamed, okay?
Yeah.
And you count backwards from the end. 637. You get before the Lamed, you get an Aleph. Before that, you get a Resh. Before that, you get a Shin. Before that, you get a Yud, which is Yisrael. So you have Yisrael, Torah, and Hashem all encoded. This is just one of the things that he figured out. Okay, there's so much more.
It took you maybe 10 days to just count it.
But even to think about this. But this is the simplest one that he did. I never got the chance to tell you all the other ones. Maybe I'll say
Where
it next
you used to live
week.
here in America?
He lived in Mount Kisco, New York. Okay, have a good day, everybody.